morning. I'm Stan Watson, welcome. I'm one of the judges. We will introduce ourselves. Just want to give you a quick read on how we probably seen it, but just to remind you. In this part of the competition, you're taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are before you start. You'll have 25 minutes with a 5-minute cushion to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During the time, teams will be interrupted. During this time, teams will not be interrupted. When you're finished, the judges will ask you questions for 20 minutes, feedback outside the role playing. So you should stay inside the role playing with feedback. Some important things to keep in mind. The ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. However, these should be described in a simple, practical, common sense fashion. Using technical, philosophical terminology or basing your argument on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. Similarly, any member of the team reading his or her part will also be considered a major mistake, although you may use notes. During this presentation, every member of the team must have some part in the speaking. Briefly, I'm Stan Watson, retired ethics officer from Verizon, formerly Commissioner of Occupational Professional Licensing for the state of Maryland and for Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission. I'll have my other judges introduce themselves and we will start.
I'm Clark Warner, former technologist. I was an engineering manager and product manager for companies such as IBECC, Apple, Matisa, Via General. But currently, I'm a doctoral student in management at the University of Toulouse, the Toulouse School of Management, in organizational behavior. My research ethics, my research interests are in behavioral ethics.
Hi, my name is Sherry Gittleman. I work for New Balance, and I'm part of our supply chain compliance program. So work on human rights, environmental, labor issues in our global supply chain. And previous to that, I spent 13 years in the mining industry working on human rights and community issues. Glad to be here.
When you're ready, you can begin.
Maybe you can imagine with a timer.
I'm sorry.
With a timer.
I have it.
Oh, okay.
And I will signal you when you get done. I'll get outside.
Okay. Thank you so
They
much.
didn't put a timer up here for you. Sometimes they'll put one up here. Yep.
Thank you so much. Good morning. We are GC Consulting, and you are the senior leadership of the Dallas Mavericks. 2011, a prime year for your organization. The Mavericks defeated the Miami Heat for the NBA championship title. Your team had one of the most amazing playoff runs in NBA history. Now, fast forward to February of this year. A used condom, pornography, sexual harassment. Sports Illustrated conducted an extensive investigation on your company, revealing its hostile work environment. Sexual harassment allegations have been made left and right. Good morning, we are DC Consulting, here to advise you on how to address this issue legally, financially, and ethically. My name is Nicole Izquierdo, and I'm your project manager.
My name is Cesar Muir, and I am your legal consultant.
My name is Daniel Ramos, and I'm your financial advisor.
And I'm Maria Leon, your ethics and compliance officer. What makes the situation even worse is that your very own chief executive officer, who remained at your company for 17 years, was the main person accused of sexually harassing women within your company. On top of that, the one person responsible for fixing a problem like this within your company, the head of the HR department, Buddy Pittman, was extremely biased. He was known for sending charged emails voicing his political ideologies and homophobic tendencies. Not only that, but according to the Sports Illustrated article, he did not even have his own office. His office was an open cubicle right next to the CEO's office, which is a problematic conflict of interest, especially since the CEO was the main person accused of sexually harassing women. Because of this, a main component of our solution, which I will elaborate on later, will be to build your HR department. As our analysis will demonstrate, the root of your problem is your HR department. After interviewing an actual former employee from your company, whose identity will remain anonymous, my team and I discovered that your company did not even have an HR department. Your HR department consisted of only one person, Buddy Pittman. Not only did your company allow Tradema Ussery to remain there for more than 17 years, but your company is also responsible for the continued employment of Earl Sneed, the beat reporter for your team. Even after being arrested and charged for domestic abuse, your company continued employing him, and your company's owner, Mark Cuban, was well aware of this. What your company has done so far is not enough. Firing the people I have previously mentioned and hiring a temporary female CEO, especially someone like Cynthia Marshall, were smart moves. However, as I will later discuss in the presentation, a sexual harassment hotline does not work. Now, what's a solution that will actually work? The Victory Plan, which is a comprehensive package of solutions which consists of 3 Ps: personnel, policies, and participation. After my colleagues speak, I will go into greater detail on the Victory Plan. Now, our legal consultant, Mr. Cesar Muid, will inform your company about the legal implications you're currently facing and how to address them properly.
The incident of rampant sexual harassment within the Dallas Mavericks leaves your company open to legal liability. And while this is a great concern, there is a solution, the Victory Plan, that not only provides your company with a legal defense, but it also provides it with deterrents necessary to remove the toxic work environment that your company has been inflicted with. My job as your legal consultant is to not only provide you with the source of your problem, but to provide you with the legal solutions necessary to evade any legal liability or any legal costs that can come from this. Unfortunately, sexual harassment is not uncommon. According to the National Sexual Harassment Hotline, at least 54% of women between the ages of 18 and 34 will experience sexual harassment and at least once in their lifetime. In that same percentage, 1 out of 3 women will experience it in the workforce. And your company is no exception to the statistics. As you can see here, according to Sports Illustrated, Tradema Ussery has said the following to a former female employee. As you see, this is not only pervasive, but it's also deeply inappropriate. And this can serve as a classic example of sexual harassment, which, according to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, is the unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and any other verbal or physical harassment in a sexual nature. And there are 2 broad categories for sexual harassment, and the one that your company has been inflicted with is a hostile work environment, which is when the environment becomes so difficult or uncomfortable working due to the sexual harassment or discrimination that's already existing within it. On the right of this slide, we provided several clauses from the Sports Illustrated article that provides enough evidence to show that within the Dallas Mavericks, there was already an existing hostile work environment for several years. The reason why I'm here is because a hostile work environment is both a state and federal civil offense. Not only does it violate Chapter 21 of the Texas Labor Code, but it also violates Title 7 of the 1965 Civil Rights Act. And because of this, several cases have emerged because of the hostile work environment. And one of the greatest concerns that you might come up with is that there's a huge disparity between the legal judgments. Some range between 5-figure sums and some go up to 8-figure sums. What our legal consulting team did was that we established the criteria necessary to determine what determines a 5-figure judgment to an 8-figure judgment. And here it is. Normally, 5-figure judgment consists of middle management as a type of accused, managers or supervisors, with an employee range of between 20 employees to 50. And normally, you won't find this type of information on the news, but the media attention is very little. For the 6 or 7 judgment, the type of accused are the upper management, bosses of the managers themselves, with media attention to little distinctive and with an employee range of 50 to 100 employees. For the 8-figure judgment, the type of accused normally consists of executive management, which can be anywhere between head coaches, vice presidents, CEOs, or presidents themselves. The media attention is normally very significant, and the employee ranges between 101 to 200 employees. Taking this information into account, we can now say that the Dallas Mavericks will unfortunately lie with the latter, the 8-figure judgment. Because the person who was accused of these allegations, Tradema Ussery, was the CEO of the company, which is the highest executive management position that there is. The media attention lately has been explosive, with not only Sports Illustrated conducting an investigation, with other major news media outlets doing the same. And your employee ranges with an approximate 200 employees, and you can expect that the legal judgment will consist of compensatory and very significant punitive damages. With this in account, you can determine that the legal liability cost can be anywhere between $10 million to $20 million. And let's say, for example, in the unlikely case that your company can evade any legal liability, your company will still have to pay anywhere between $300,000 to $500,000 in legal fees to have a lawyer come in and represent your company and your interests. And we didn't come up with this information on our own. In fact, we hired Renee Ruiz, a senior partner of the Stearns Weaver Mid organization, who said, for a company of your size, you can expect this amount of money to be used for your defense. So this is why we want to implement the victory plan, because here in the bold lettering, as you can see, we provide their legal interests as not only to revise their zero tolerance policy, but to also revise their handbooks. And make it clear that sexual harassment training has to be everyone's job, and no matter what, no matter the position. And while unfortunately I am going through this site relatively quick, our project manager will go further in detail at the end of the presentation. What I'm trying to establish here is that with these things in mind, you can establish a legal defense for the sexual harassment. The one that you're looking for is the Farringer-Eller affirmative defense, which is a test to determine whether or not your company can be held liable for any sexual harassment or hostile work environment allegations. By following the two criteria below, your company can evade any legal cost or any legal liability in the future. Now, the legal cost only serves as a small fraction of the potential financial burden your company may be inflicted with. That is why we'll now pass it on to our financial advisor, who will give you a more holistic analysis of the financial costs.
Thank you, Caesar. So, implementing our victory plan will cost a considerable amount of money. But as I will show you, these costs pale in comparison to the cost of not taking action at all, which include loss of sponsors, turnover costs, loss of fans, and fines and lawsuits. Sponsorship loss is all too common these days. From the NRA to talk shows, it has even made its way into the sports industry. So when a company decides to sponsor a team, they do so knowing full well that that team's fans will associate one with the other. Because of this, it makes sense that a company wouldn't want to sponsor a team who is tied to all these sexual harassment allegations. So in total, all the NBA teams share $861 million in sponsorship revenue. Distributed amongst the 30 NBA teams, this leaves $28,700,000 in sponsorship revenue per team. Now, the Mavericks has 10 major sponsors which make up almost all of its sponsorship revenue, including Coca-Cola, Lexus, Coors, and AT&T. So when distributed amongst these 10, this leaves $2,870,000 per sponsor. Losing just 3 sponsors means a loss of over $8 million annually. Another area of potential loss lies within the increase of turnover rate as a result of sexual harassment. When a worker is exposed to an environment filled with sexual harassment, similar to that of the Dallas Mavericks, they are more inclined to quit their job. According to PeopleKey, the average cost of turnover is 6 to 9 months' salary in recruiting and training. For the average employee making $50,000, including benefits, this means $25,000 to $37,500 lost on average each worker due to turnover. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average turnover rate attributed to quitting is 26%. Also, the Journal of International Women's Studies says that any worker who is exposed to a hostile work environment as a result of sexual harassment is 63% more likely to quit their job than those workers who are not exposed to such an environment. In this case, the average quit rate of 26% is increased to 42%. For the Dallas Mavericks, this difference means 30 more workers quitting every year. The turnover cost of 20 to 30 workers quitting means $500,000 to $1,125,000 annually. Another area of concern is loss of fans. In 2017, the Dallas Mavericks had a total of $42 million in gay receipt sales. Now, based on previous cases which we have researched, we can infer that the Dallas Mavericks can lose anywhere from 5 to 25% of its fan base if this problem persists. In terms of gay receipt sales, this means a loss of $2 million to $10.5 million annually. Finally, Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks may very well face an NBA fine similar to that of Donald Sterling, who was fined $2.5 million for racial remarks he made over an audio tape recording. Not only this, he also lost his team, the LA Clippers. Now, while Sterling's remarks were generally offensive, they did not impact anybody in particular. Unfortunately for the Dallas Mavericks, this is not the case. Also, our legal consultant explained that your company can face legal liability of anywhere from $10 to $20 million. Now, we can estimate that the cost of not taking action can be anywhere from $15 to $42 million. Fixing the problem. This includes hiring a diverse HR workforce, conducting regular employee surveys, offering sexual harassment and civility training, revising the employee handbooks, and offering women opportunity programs. According to the Society of Human Resource Management, any company with up to 250 full-time employees should have an average of 3.4 HR workers on their team. Now, according to a primary source who previously worked for the Dallas Mavericks, Buddy Pittman was the one and only member of the HR department. This is unacceptable because the Dallas Mavericks has approximately 200 employees. Any company of this size should have 3 to 5 HR workers on their team. At an average salary of $50,000, this would be an annual cost of $150,000 to $250,000 annually. So, regular employee surveys must be conducted to ensure employee satisfaction consistently. Through a company called Qualtrics, we can make and distribute employee surveys for around $200,000. These surveys will use statistics and metrics to maximize employee satisfaction. Sexual harassment training and civility courses must be mandatory for all employees as well. According to Marketplace, this would cost approximately $100,000. Besides this, effective employee handbooks are necessary to provide the necessary guidelines for worker behavior. Through the Society of Human Resource Management, this would give an annual cost of $350. Perhaps the most important solution we can offer you is to give women more opportunities within the workplace. According to the International Finance Corporation, any woman who is allowed to progress within the business world is not only increases productivity, it also decreases turnover rate. To add on to this, Harvard Business Review says that decreasing this gender gap in the workplace also decreases the likelihood of sexual harassment occurring within the workplace. Because of this, more opportunities must be given to women within the workplace. This could be in the form of more women recruitment and also giving women more access to resources within the workplace. This program would also include 10 scholarships of $10,000 for women pursuing careers in the sports industry. Now, while these scholarships wouldn't necessarily impact your company in particular, it would definitely improve your image. Now, the components of our victory plan that would actually cost money, as I just explained, are building an HR department, increasing opportunities for women, conducting regular employee surveys, revising the handbooks, and offering sexual harassment and civility training. Using this analysis, we can now compare the cost of not fixing the problem to the cost of fixing the problem. As I mentioned before, the cost of not fixing the problem can run anywhere from $15 million to $42 million, while the cost of fixing the problem can be anywhere from $550,000 to $650,000 annually. I will now turn it over to your Ethics and Compliance Officer, Marie.
Many of you may be asking yourselves the question, what, if anything, can be done on sexual harassment? Financial gave you numbers and legal gave you precedent. I'm here to provide you with the strict guidelines that your company must implement in order to ensure that the toxic environment of the Dallas Mavericks does not persist. We've framed our ethical analysis on 3 main questions. Firstly, where do we draw the line between casual conversation and sexual harassment? How are we making the distinction between friendly banter and inappropriate behavior? Secondly, how to balance the rights of the accuser and the accused. While we want our victims to feel safe coming forth with their complaints to the HR department, we also want to make sure that the accused know that no immediate action will take place unless the proper evidence does come to light. And finally, how are we creating sexual harassment policies that actually protect the victims? The image of the Dallas Mavericks has come under tough scrutiny ever since the release of the Sports Illustrated article in February. And while we do want to make sure we restore this image, we are not simply window dressing the situation, but actually making sure that we assess the task on hand to ensure that this conduct does not persist. Mark Cuban, easily one of the most recognizable entrepreneurs in the world and the owner of your team, the Dallas Mavericks. He boasts himself of being a hands-on manager, but claims that he was not aware of the behavior going on within his company. This is the behavior that he allowed to fester. As seen here in this survey conducted by the Washington Post, 54% of women said that they had unwanted sexual advancements within the workplace, and 95% of the portion of men who were accused went unpunished. The disparity of men to women in the sports industry is very high, and men are able to use their high positions within the company to make sure that they go unpunished, just as Chidema Ushri was able to do for the past 17 years. That's why our first question, drawing the line, is so difficult to answer. Americans define sexual harassment very differently, with elements such as gender, race, and age thrown into the mix. But we're here to give you a strict definition for it in order to ensure that when this does occur, we know how to stop it. So what are we considering sexual harassment? Offensive and unwelcome sexual invitations. This could be said or implied quid pro quo, or simply invitations of a sexual nature within co-workers of equal employment. Secondly, offensive and unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature. This could be conduct in person or through online computer systems, such as the emails that Buddy Pittman was sending out to his employees. As the Dallas Mavericks, you do have the right to regulate your own computers and computer systems that you provide to your employees to make sure that discriminatory and misogynistic messages are not sent online. And finally, offensive and unwelcome physical contact of a sexual nature. This is the inappropriate touching of one's own body and the public display of it, or the inappropriate touching of another co-worker's body. Our second question, how are we balancing the rights of the accused and the accuser? We are implementing the correct due process in order to make sure that our victims feel safe coming forth with their complaints to the HR department. As our project manager, Nicole, will further detail in our victory plan, many victims did not feel safe and feared retaliation, and was the reason that they did not come forth to Buddy Pittman. It can be said that your HR department was non-existent. The accuser and the accused. We will be implementing a zero tolerance policy, one that your current CEO, Cynthia Marshall, implemented at her previous place of employment, AT&T, where she held a position for 36 years. When the proper evidence does come to light, there will be taken immediate action. No matter your position within the company, whether you are the CEO and whether you brought in millions of revenue to the company, this behavior is not tolerated, and we will not have a place for you within the Dallas Mavericks. And how are we protecting our victims? How are we making sure that our victims feel comfortable coming forth with the behavior that they do not feel comfortable in? Reporting. In order for a complaint to be considered formal, it will have to be written. An investigation will take place 10 days since the complaint comes forth to the HR department. An immediate action will take place. When the evidence comes to light, investigation will not only investigate the people accused, but also anyone in the company who may have knowledge on the situation, and they will be fired immediately after this evidence comes to light. What other policies are we implementing? Codes of conduct and awareness programs, just as the civility programs and the surveys mentioned by my coworkers. And regular review. This is something that we stress very much, because we do not only want to implement these policies because of the article that released, but we want to make sure that your name does not appear on headlines anymore because of this conduct. We want to make sure that your employees know that it is their responsibility not only to report behavior that is conducted against them, but that they see going on to their co-workers in the company. If sexual harassment is seen, it is the duty of all employees to report it to the sexual harassment department. Now, with movements such as Me Too and Time's Up, awareness for sexual harassment has become very prominent, not only in the sports industry, but also in Hollywood and other companies such as Uber. That's why we want to make sure that we assess the situation. We're not only working to restore your image, but making sure that this is not a problem that continues to happen within your company. With our victory plan, sexual harassment is sure to come to a halt. And now our project manager, Nicole, will further detail our victory plan. One of the very few things your company has done so far is establishing a sexual harassment hotline. After researching the effectiveness of hotlines, my team and I have come to the conclusion that they do not work. Melissa Weishaupt, one of your former employees who was also a victim of sexual harassment within your company, revealed her identity to Sports Illustrated in an interview. In the interview, she was asked her thoughts on the hotlines. She said two things. One, she spoke to a dozen current and former employees and they had no idea what the hotline was or how to find it. And two, that the women did not long for counseling. They longed for a culture that would ensure a safe working environment, which will be made possible through the Victory Plan. According to Sarah Kessler, a deputy editor of Courts at Work, sexual harassment hotlines are rarely designed for the use of employees. Instead, they are designed for the use of the company for legal cover-up. Employment law experts claim that sexual harassment hotlines often exist in obscurity. Even if awareness and accessibility aren't a problem, employees rarely use hotlines to report sexual harassment. A survey of more than 300,000 employees by the Corporate Executive Board shows that even when victims do report sexual harassment, they rarely use hotlines to do so. Only 7% of the respondents claimed on using hotlines for reporting the harassment. Now, what's a solution that will actually work? The Victory Plan. By adopting the Victory Plan, your company will avoid future liability, decrease expenses, and adhere to moral code. Now, I will go into greater detail on the 3 Ps of the Victory Plan. First, personnel. To fix the root of the problem, we highly recommend building your HR department. Your HR department consisted of one man who was extremely biased and who sat in close proximity to the CEO's office. Due to being a company of approximately 200 employees, your company requires 3 to 5 HR employees, both men and women. Your location of your HR department was also a red flag. Your HR department should be located as far away from the CEO's office as possible to avoid a conflict of interest, and it should be a private space, not an open space that it was, so that employees aren't afraid of being heard by others. Another component of the Victory Plan is to hire and promote more women. After analyzing the correlation between gender disparity and sexual harassment within the workplace, my team and I came to the conclusion that harassment flourishes in workplaces where men dominate and where women are less represented, such as the sports industry. Therefore, harassment occurs significantly less in workplaces where women are well represented. How will this promotion and representation be made possible? With examples such as having job advertisements with inclusive language, having managers conduct a holistic approach in the interview process with names anonymized and without any gender cues. Some of these women you won't have to hire. They're already within your company. They just haven't been provided the adequate resources and haven't been provided the right opportunities to rank up. Another component of our Victory Plan is policies. By implementing a zero-tolerance policy, someone like Chudemo Usuri will not be able to maintain a position in your company for as long as he did. A zero-tolerance policy makes sure that sexual harassment is not condoned within your company. Someone like Cynthia Marshall, who's your current temporary female CEO, has implemented this in the past with AT&T, and it has shown to be effective, which is why we want to apply it at your company as well. Also, we will be conducting regular employee surveys. Not only do they improve employee satisfaction, but they also provide management with useful metrics and quantified data to allow them to see what areas in their company they must improve. And finally, participation. Sexual harassment training is a huge component of the Victory Plan. To make it effective, not only will your employees be required to go to these, but also your company's leadership. It is shown that if the company's leadership attends these, the other employees will know that this is a severe problem and that it must be taken serious. Not only will we be focusing on sexual harassment training, but also civility training, because incivility correlates with harassment within the workplace. At these trainings, workers will know where to draw the line between casual conversation and sexual harassment, and they will know how to behave properly within the workplace. And finally, making sure that harassment prevention is everyone's job within the company, not only the HR departments. If another employee witnesses sexual harassment happening, they must report it to the HR department. And they will know this from the sexual harassment trainings because it will be made clear what must be done in situations like this. If your company adopts the Victory Plan, not only will you be known as a prestigious MBA team, but you will also be known as a leading company in workplace relations. Thank you.
Excuse me, thank you. I guess I got so caught up with top of that clock. Thank you for bringing this information to our attention, and we're going to ask you some questions and try to give you some feedback as a board. We appreciate all the work you've done to bring this to our attention, and your work has also raised some questions. They have also offered some answers to what we think is a solution. So I'm going to start by saying, by asking one question, do you think that the whole issue of sexual harassment can be resolved within the Human Resources Department. Having worked for other corporations and seen some of these situations arise, we find that sometimes the Human Resources Department is the area that generates the problem because they feel so driven to deliver what management wants in terms of achieving its mission. So I have some concern as to the ability of the Human Resources Department to be the answer to this question or problem.
That's an excellent concern. As we have mentioned before, your company did not have an HR department to begin with. We discovered this by interviewing one of your actual former employees who told us that Buddy Pittman was the only person employed in the HR department. He was extremely biased. He would send emails voicing his political ideologies, what he thought about abortion and immigration, which is something that someone in HR should not be doing, especially in a company like the Dallas Mavericks. Also, being a company of 200 employees, having only one person in the HR department to have this problem put upon him is not enough. That's why you need 3 to 5. And with the strict guidelines that we provided with drawing the line, sexual harassment training, and civility courses, the HR department will be able to diminish sexual harassment within your workplace.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so you mentioned that hotlines tend to be ineffective, but they tend to be seen really as ways for companies to come problem, if you will, not something for the employees. And you mentioned that the subjects of harassment aren't interested in counseling, which I can understand. They're interested in improvements in the workplace. So I'm curious, how will incidences of sexual harassment get reported such that you can take this immediate action when someone goes? The surveys, I assume, are anonymous.
Yes.
And if there's not a hotline, what's the mechanism by which someone can bring these issues to front? So just to speak with someone in HR, or is there some other mechanism?
That's an excellent question. As Maria mentioned, there will be written formal complaints to the HR department, and perhaps if they aren't that confident to go to the HR department to voice their complaints, with the employee surveys, they will be able to do so anonymously, and the management will see that this is a problem going on, so they will go to the HR department so that they conduct a reasonable investigation on seeing where the sexual harassment is happening within the workplace.
I just wanted to ask a question as well on hotlines, because it's been my experience that when you need to have some kind of mechanism for problems to be raised, and it needs to be in a way where it's confidential and secure, right? There's no retaliation. So did you guys consider having a third-party hotline? Because I see the problem of going to HR, especially if HR has not been effective in the past. And you have the worker survey, and I believe you referred to a third-party organization that would do the surveys. So let's say something happened horrible to me at work yesterday. Do I have to wait until the next survey is conducted, but maybe I start to, say that there was a problem, or do you want to cut that problem immediately? If I called a third-party hotline, I would feel like, nobody knows it was me. I had that confidential conversation. I got some advice. I'm just curious, did you guys look at those, and did you look at what makes a hotline effective rather than saying they're not effective? Because I think it does create a legal risk. You did say a lot of companies just do it because it kind of, makes it look like, okay, we've covered the scene, but I think it is a risk if we don't have a mechanism for people to voice immediate problems.
We were just mentioning that it's not as effective as other means within the company, so having it right now in place, someone like you, if you would have had a problem like that in the workplace, you would be able to use the hotline. However, with the HR department that we're recommending that will be highly effective, a one-on-one conversation with an employee from the HR department immediately when you go into work the next morning will be more one-on-one, and you'll be able to write the formal complaint, and an investigation will be provided to you.
Yeah, even though the hotline, it can help someone, like you said, that something happens and they want it to be taken care of immediately, we just want to stress that it's not enough, that we need to implement further policies in order to make sure that if this person feels counseling is not enough and they want action to take place, that they have this opportunity of reporting it to the HR department.
Yeah, I think it's important that there's a way for confidential reporting, because it's quite embarrassing, right? And I don't want to be a problem maker. We've been in the news. I don't want to create another problem in my job. So I need a way to voice a complaint in a confidential way that would get back to the company if there's a problem. Maybe they don't even know who called, said there's problems. Just something to consider.
Thank you.
One of my concerns is the crux of the problem is with the CEO. We're going to put this responsibility in the Human Resources Department. Doesn't have a Human Resources Department reports to the CEO.
Yes, that's
Let me, part two of the question. How do we then separate the problem from the individual when that may be the chain of command? And I think that goes to the question about hotlines and the possibility of a third-party hotline. It creates what's kind of a secular concern of mine, and that is, even when you have this reporting, what evaluation mechanism do you have in effect to say that the reporting and handling of the problem is being effective?
right. Well, when the victim does come forth with a complaint to the HR department, it will be kept confidential, although the accused does have the right to know that they are being investigated on certain matters. And as for the CEO, with the zero tolerance policy, even though they are in charge, no matter their position, the action will take place. So the HR department does have the right to investigate anybody in the company who these claims are going against. And if it's the CEO, they have the right to say that the behavior is not acceptable and to terminate their position.
Have we terminated the CEO?